Bike paths, any future bike paths would have to meet the adopted bicycle and pedestrian master plan adopted this year. That's really it. Staff recommends approval with no conditions. A unique situation where somebody's downzoning the property to single-family residential, which is consistent with what's surrounding the site.
And I think, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, if this is successful in the coming months, we'll probably see some applications relative to platting and perhaps planning on this piece and maybe an adjacent piece for future subdivision. Those are some of the conceptual discussions we've been having. But the zoning does go back to at least the early 90s from what we can tell. The record gets a little murky.
I like that cross.
Is that fair enough? Happy to answer any questions you might have.
Makes all sense in the world to me.
Yeah, pretty straightforward.
And you know, just going back to our road levy from last year, that extension of Merritt Parkway over to Troy Road is really key to getting, you know, expanding our network of roads there on the west side of town. So anything that we can do to encourage that development, I definitely fully support.
Yeah, we have two. We have this property owner, and then the one to the immediate southeast is in different ownership. But when I've had conversations with both those groups and Mike's a representative, in my mind, it would be probably easiest from the Merrick Road extension standpoint if they were both kind of moving together. But we'll have to kind of see how she goes. But they both are aware that the Merrick extension is a priority.
Any other questions for staff? Is there a representative for the applicant here tonight who'd like to come forward? Just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Michael Shea, and I'm an attorney at law, and I represent the Judith D. Hook Revocable Trust, and my address is Post Office Box 438, Delaware, Ohio. I guess the simplest way to say is that bad things come back to haunt you later on. I happen to be the mayor of this community when the Poling family wanted to build a batting cage, anticipating that Smith Park was going to be built. And I had a conversation with Dave and Lance today, and we were trying to pick each other's brains on exactly how this property got zoned the way it was zoned. This was part of Troy Farms. Troy Farms was owned by Dr. David Smith, and it has kind of, you know, after all the initial development, this piece just kind of sat there. As part of his overall development, he gave to the city of Delaware the land which is now Smith Park. In looking at this land and when the closing took place and my clients acquired the property, which was just recently, but before that they started talking with people thinking that there may be a demand for apartments and other types of higher density housing. And, you know, unfortunately, and this is kind of a pet peeve of mine, is that the way we have things structured, whether you want apartments or not, the way we have things structured with regard to the cost of utilities, most developers can't make it work. You know, 44 acres, you'd think that you could make that work, but it's just the way the structure is. And when you're competing against the market of Columbus and they're building apartments left and right, because their utility pricing is entirely different than ours. I'm not saying ours is incorrect or what we're charging. I'm just saying it's like 8, 9 times what the city of Columbus is charging. So it makes it very tough to make those, and I've dealt with a number of people that have looked at different properties around town, and the same argument comes up, they just can't make it happen. Now, some people can maybe do it differently, have a different product, I don't know. You know, as for Merrick Parkway, you know, that's, you know, there's no problem with the, you know, working through those issues. The question is the alignment, and how it gets aligned and where it crosses. I was sent an earlier alignment this year when they first started looking at this property, and the alignment had it going over the park, over the pond in the park. I don't think you're going to put a road there. So those are just issues that have to be resolved, and I think that Dave's correct. I think the best way to have this fashion is to get all these players moving together, and then maybe also straightening out a problem, which is the big curve in this in Troy Road. But that's property outside of our control, and although I do think that there's, as Dave indicated, I think there's some people of interest that are looking at how that can be developed. So that's the whole reason for the request. I expect my clients to actively solicit the assistance of developers to help that are in the housing game. My client is not in the housing game. So that's where things stand, and we would ask that you support this, and then hopefully maybe both groups can get together and maybe bring a plan forward.
Okay, thank you.
I've got a question. Mr. Shea, just from hearing what you just said about the rising costs in utilities, it could ultimately be something that would be cost prohibitive for a developer to come in and put a housing development there. Are you, I mean, I'm sure maybe your clients don't know this, but other developers that they may be soliciting are aware of that.
Oh.
So ultimately, what do you think you see happening then? I mean,
Well,
just this property getting rezoned and then just sitting there because a developer wouldn't?
No, I
Couldn't see
think,
the economics in it?
I want to make it clear that what I was referring to was the apartment,
Right,
or smaller units.
okay,
It's based on number of bedrooms,
Mhm.
and then it's allocated on that. Well, you know, when you're at 66% for a one-bedroom apartment on $11,000, it's hard to get the rents high enough to make that happen. The same thing is true with if you're talking 2 bedrooms and 3 bedrooms. We know there's a demand.
Right.
Everybody knows there's a demand. But it's and they would be facing this in the county too. I mean, it's the counties, you know, with Delco Water, they're getting very close to the city now in single tap. So it's cost of government continues to rise, continues to be a problem, and you incur great amounts of debt for facilities. Water treatment plants don't come cheap, sewage treatment plants, and running utilities is extremely expensive. And I think that Delaware's done overall a good job of managing it. I just think that what we adopted was the plan that was put forward by the Ohio EPA. And I'm not sure that I always agree with them and how they come to believe this happens. Most apartments, a lot of apartments are older people. They don't use as much utilities as we think they do. Having my wife spending a little more time in Arizona, and I'm there, and I'm at your base rate for charges, monthly charges. So I think it's one of those things that We just have to be cognizant of it. If we're going to be competitive and we want to have a variety of housing to meet all people's needs in this community, I think we have to think about those things and how we do that. But that's for you as a body and city council as a body to make those decisions and look at what's best for in the long-term interest of the community.
Any other questions for the applicant? All right.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public here this evening that would wish to comment on this particular case? All right, seeing none, I bring it back to the commission.
Make a motion to approve 2017-2592, with all the staff's recommendations, and I guess that's it, recommendations.
Motion by Mr. Halter,
Second.
second by Mr. Badger.
Mr. Badger?
Yes.
Mr. Halter?
Yes.
Mr. Pearl?
Yes.
Mr. Volnick?
Yes.
Councilman Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Mansoris?
Yes.
Chairman Simpson?
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you. All right, the next item on tonight's agenda is the planning director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. Anticipate Trepless development, multifamily apartment development to come in for final development plan in December probably. They're tracking for that, and I think they've worked through the secondary or really tertiary emergency access point coming as anticipated behind the shopping center and between those couple of buildings, but eliminating the pinch point that we talked about amongst the other conditions. So I know they're excited to finish up those plans and bring them forward, and we're excited to get them. We did have a case bump from tonight's agenda that we anticipate hopefully coming back in December as well. What else did we have on that we're looking at for?
Communities Glen Ross, Section 12. We approved Section 11 earlier this year. It's the detached condos out there. Final plat for that will be in next one. And next Wednesday's the deadline, so we anticipate potentially a few more cases coming forward.
Okay.
Could be a few. And then the last thing I have for you tonight is just, obviously I've got some communications from me on relative to the comprehensive plan and just some updates and things. I'm going to try to do that a little bit more and just feed you some information and background material on general planning kinds of stuff as we get ready to go into a comp plan update. But hopefully you have had a chance to read the RFP. And the plan now is they're due back on the 11th or 10th of November. I anticipate we're going to get quite a few of them, and we'll get good ones. I've had a few calls wanting to just clarify a few things with respect to the RFP, so that's good. And then I think we'll do a staff level cut decision on the consultant group or team that we would go with. And then as we have it written, sort of the first thing is to finish up the scope of the plan as well. You're trying to utilize their expertise, which is really best practice now. And it's good part of what we're hiring them for. And get it contracted before the end of the year, maybe most importantly. And then get right into it next year. Probably public involvement doesn't start till, it's never good to start that during the bad winter months, and we'll have prep work to do. So we'll scope it out in more fine-grained detail from there. But just some of the groups I've got calls from, I'm pleased with, and I look forward to their submissions. Big work product for us, and you all will be, and you, because you will be very intimately involved in that. And with Game 7 of the World Series, that's all I had.
What's the estimated timeline for that, the completion?
Right
You may have
now,
said it, and
right
I
now,
apologize.
we say in the RFP, we anticipate about 18 months.
Yep, okay.
I've seen them go faster.
Mhm.
They always, at the end, will take longer than you anticipate at the beginning, because that's just what happens as people are arguing about and tinkering about with the last things and approvals and such. It's just what happens. So we'll see. You don't want them to, you really don't want them to take too little time, because there's a lot of work here and a lot of public
You want it to be
involvement that we have to do,
exhaustive.
and a
Yeah.
lot of analysis and thinking and synthesis of the
Mhm.
information that we get. And then you don't want them to drag out forever.
Mhm.
At some point, we have to adopt a new plan and policies, and then look to how we implement them with changes maybe into the zoning code and engineering specifications, and maybe lots of things that we do that ultimately implement the plan. That's what we've done with the current plan, and we've done a pretty good job of that as well in implementing those pieces, and also being flexible where we need to be flexible as the time has passed and things have changed. So if anybody would like a hard copy of the plan, I have an electronic one, and it's fine for certain things, but I am a big margin note maker, so it's put sticky notes in them still. So I like having my bound copy. If you want one of those, we have them available. I can just let me know. We can get them to you. So
All right.
that's it.
How long would you expect comprehensive plan to, let's say the one we had went for about a 5-year type window. How long would you anticipate this next one moving forward, future-wise, to make sure that covers the length that you're looking for, and maybe even extending it a little bit longer?
Well, the current comp plan is short range, medium range, and long range. And what is suggested is that you relook at it, maybe do major updates every 5 years. But and that's sort of the answer on the test to get our certifications as planners. That's what you say. But the reality is that to implement, anything beyond some of the short-term goals and objectives, just takes longer than 5 years. Usually 10 years is a pretty good horizon, and then planning horizon, but then the document itself has to be visionary and long range enough to look out, probably a good 20 years, 25 years, knowing that lots is going to change in that time period as well. So those are more probably the broader goals and objectives that do that.
Okay.
And that's what we're looking for in this plan as well. We put sort of a 10-year planning horizon, and then, the longer range planning horizon as well.
Okay. All right. Commission member comments and discussion?
I have nothing.
Nothing?
No.
Okay. George?
Nothing, thank you.
Jim?
Mine's always the same. I'm concerned about the lack of lighting on the Hawk Road path. It just, now it's getting darker earlier. It just seems to me that really something should be done with that. And I also noticed they put up more guardrail. Is that the city or is that the county on Hawk Road on the west side? I come home one day and find out they're out there pounding in stakes, and I would have thought somebody might have notified somebody of this going on.
That was us. We were doing maintenance, and whenever you do maintenance on guardrail, if there's any
No,
deficiencies.
this is new guardrail.
Right. If there's any deficiencies in the area, then we could be held liable if we don't address the deficiencies. If there's
There was an
guardrail.
accident there a week or so before, and then all of a sudden,
Well, sometimes accidents do make us aware of certain issues, and we inspect our bridges. Sometimes the bridge inspectors, if it was the approach to the bridge you're referring to, or a little bit further.
it not only was the approach to the bridge,
Right.
but it was after the bridge too.
Right.
So it was on my property and then the Rodman property after. I mean, it doesn't bother me one way or the other. I just,
Right.
all of a sudden, just boom, bang, and I don't think anybody had any idea. And of course, it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's just about the ideal time to
Right.
shut that road down to one lane. I mean, you know, once again, I wouldn't go anywhere, so I don't care, but I'm with you.
That road is multi-jurisdictional, there's pieces that
I
are
know it.
outside. So I'll have to make sure that, I'll follow up and see if, just to make
part
sure
was put in with all the city,
there's all in the city.
my
Okay.
property and Robin's property.
That was what I thought.
Yeah, it was all there, okay?
We'll find, we'll
It
find
wasn't
out
the city
why.
of Delaware, these wasn't their trucks doing it.
No, we don't have the equipment to do.
I didn't know if that
actual
was a county or a township. I don't know who's responsible for that.
We did a lot of guardrail out there. Now, did they piggyback our work with some of their own work while the contractor was in town? Possibly, but I think it was all of our work. And
I think it would have been nice if you put some signs up telling people this road can be shut down to one lane.
Right.
Because it was just at an inopportune time in the afternoon, as Tom Homan always told me, that was just the peak time.
Right. Okay, I will,
I think for future,
I appreciate the feedback.
yeah, but they did a nice job. I mean, really, that when they cleaned up, you would swear that thing been in there forever. I mean, it was very quick.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's why we
Yeah,
typically
done
contract, that's why we typically contract it out. They're very efficient. The one company, the two companies that do it.
I think, you know, it'd be
Ohio.
nice just to let the people traveling that road know that it was going to be shut down to one lane on, you know, October 26th.
I do remember doing a press release, but we didn't notify homeowners or immediate.
You didn't notify this
Right,
homeowner,
right.
I guarantee you that. And I understand, and I hope there's nobody here, a press release has got to be very difficult.
Right.
Okay? Very, very difficult to get out. Other than that, I'm happy with the fog and I'm on it.
Excellent. George?
Nothing.
Nothing? Andy?
Nothing.
Christ, you got a council, you came on quiet.
Election day is fast approaching. Make sure you go out on that day to cast your vote.
Yeah.
Vote early, vote often.
That's right, vote early, vote often. Our next regular meeting is December 6th, 7 PM, same time, same place. And with that, we are adjourned at
7:27.
7:27. That was fast, guys.
That was a quick.
Record. Got a